All right, good evening, everybody. Hopefully this is working. Okay, my name is Denise Rice, and we are here for week 2 of the Adoptive Parent Training Series through the Central Missouri Foster Care and Adoption Association. So I hope we're all in the right place and looking forward to spending the next hour with you, getting into a second phase, not phase per se, but our second kind of lifelong issue in adoption. So last week we talked about grief and loss, and this week we are going to explore rejection. Rejection from the perspective of the adoption triad, which again includes our children and youth who've been adopted, our birth families, birth parents, and our adoptive parents. So with that, I'm excited to be able to spend this time with you this week. My sincerest apologies for last week. I picked up some sort of a bug when I was traveling to and from Florida. I was presenting at a foster care conference and did not have a voice by last Tuesday morning. So felt that it would be in everybody's best interest if we postponed that 1 week until I got my voice back. Since this is a live or recorded webinar, it would be a waste of everybody's time if the trainer didn't have a voice. So again, my apologies. And whether you're on with us live or you'll be watching this at another point in time, if it didn't work with your schedule, I am honored to be able to share this space with you all. And I have an opportunity to learn as well every single time I do a training or a webinar. I'm in the presence of those who I believe are really the conduits for healing for our children and our adolescents who have experienced trauma, disrupted attachments, been hurt in the context of a relationship. My belief is that those that have been traumatized in a relationship can only heal in the context of a relationship. So my kudos to you out there in the world for the work that you are doing day in and day out, which is the hardest job I think any human being could ask of one to give to another. So thank you for all that you do. And truly, I'm of the belief that nobody is really beyond the hope of healing. So I think the more that we can have opportunities like this where we can share ideas, where we can gain some insight, where we can, strengthen our foundation a little bit more, I think it's a bonus for everybody. So again, I want to thank you for your time and want to be very respectful of your time as well. I didn't really get much of a chance last week because I kind of jumped right in because there's really so much to talk about with regards to grief and loss. But just really quickly, I just want to give you all a little bit of a background and kind of how I came into contact with the Central Missouri Foster Care and Adoption Association. Again, my name is Denise Rice. I am in Colorado Springs. I come to you first and foremost as a social worker. My second identification is as a therapist, and then I'm also a trainer both locally and nationally, primarily on issues related to foster care, kinship, and adoption. I have been in the field for just about 20 years now. Started off working in a group home with adolescent girls who had been in the system for an average of about 7 years, and all that had goals of emancipation from the system once they turned 18 or graduated from high school. And even before that, I knew that my mission, my calling was to be somehow involved, a support. I didn't know it would end up being as a therapist or as a trainer, but really as a social worker to try to make some difference in the lives of someone who, again, was hurt by those that they were really dependent on. And I've been very fortunate for the last 20 years to be able to meet and participate in and collaborate and work within a clinical capacity or in an emergency psychiatric assessment basis, or now again kind of coming full circle, working very closely with a group of foster parents in my community who have decided to open their hearts and open their homes to a lot of our older youth in the system, with the goal of providing a more kind of an intense trauma-informed parenting perspective and paradigm. And then alongside that, taking on a more coaching kind of a mentor role to really help our older youth not only establish those lifelong connections and relationships, but to be successful on their next journeys in their life, whatever that looks like. So I'm very fortunate to be a part of that, as well as still have my hand clinically. I do crisis assessments or psychiatric assessments in an emergency department here in a local hospital in Colorado Springs, which is where I'll be going right after I leave you guys tonight. I work nights doing that so that I have the flexibility to be able to partner and train with families and organizations, again, both locally and nationally. So I'm also a licensed addiction counselor here in the state of Colorado. So I love to find opportunities where I can kind of combine the two passions that I have. And a lot of times those two really go hand in hand with our population, whether it's with our youth or whether it's with our parents. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update in case you had any questions or anything like that. The other thing I'm going to put out to you, this is a little different format than I'm used to using, but I do want to encourage questions and comments and feedback. If I don't get to your question while we are kind of live on air, I still want to encourage you to please send me an email if you have a follow-up question or looking for a resource or some additional information on anything that we talk about or something that maybe you've been thinking about before. I'm happy to be that resource, and I do and I will get back to you. So if you want to email me, it is included in the PowerPoint that was emailed out last week, and I'm not sure if it was sent out again today, but jot this down if you haven't already. I am a resource for you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but my email is Denise Rice. It's one word, DENISE, Rice is RICE, at hotmail.com. Again, my email is Denise Rice at hotmail.com. So if you have a question or comment, and I'll be checking my email on my cell phone over here. So if you do have something that you would like tackled while we are on the air, please feel free to do that. If not, shoot me an email offline and I will get back to you. And if it's something that I think would be applicable for the group or for anybody else who might be watching, I will go ahead and bring it up next week. I'm sorry, at the next session, which is June, so I'll make sure I have the right date. June 6th is our next scheduled session, and that will be on guilt and shame. So again, if it doesn't come up this session and I think it's appropriate for everybody, I will bring it up at the next one in June. So looking forward to, again, interacting with you guys. If there's anything that I can clarify or can be of assistance with, please let me know. But you have an amazing agency in Missouri. I am a huge fan of that organization. The staff are phenomenal. Just exude just patience and passion and commitment. And so you are very fortunate to have an organization such as that in your state. And so I just want you guys to know that not every state has something like that. So please take advantage of all of the different opportunities that they have, the different supports, the different resources. It is truly a gift, and I can't say it enough. They are doing amazing work out there in Missouri. And I actually just saw the new, I don't know if it was a magazine or an expanded newsletter I just saw on Facebook, and it was high quality stuff. So again, kudos to the work that Central Missouri Foster Care and Adoption Association is doing. I wish we could clone you guys and have you in every state, because it is definitely needed. So thank you to what you guys are doing as well. Okay, you guys are ready? Let's talk about rejection. First and foremost, this is a tough topic. I think all of them can be very difficult in different ways for different people. But the first thing I want you to kind of think about, just to kind of put yourself in a headspace, is when you think about the word rejection, or think about a time that you have felt rejected, and what that felt like for you, what it felt like in your brain, what it felt like in your body. What experiences in adoption have led to feelings of rejection? And again, this is going to vary depending on what your particular role is in adoption. If you are an adoptive parent, you are going to have your own specific feelings with regards to adoption. But I want you to sit with that for a minute. Think about that. If you have a piece of paper, jot down a couple of words, a couple of phrases. What does it feel like for you? What has it felt like for you in your life when you have been rejected? Being rejected by another person, rejected or not qualified for whatever, didn't get a job, a breakup with a significant other growing up. Maybe you felt rejection from your own family, your own parents, feeling like you weren't good enough, you weren't worthy. Just think about that for a minute. Just kind of hold that for a second. Don't try to push it away, but let it kind of come up however it's coming up for you, and noticing what's happening in your body. Are you starting to get a little tense because I'm bringing it up? Are you kind of feeling a little tense in the back of your neck, and so you're kind of doing this? Are you trying to find something else to do because you don't want to think about it, even though I'm asking you to, and I'm really far away from you? Do you notice that your hands are starting to get clammy? What is it? That is part of, I think, again, if we, and I say we collectively, if we really want to be that conduit to healing for our children and our youth who have been hurt in the context of a relationship, we have to be comfortable talking about and feeling and having experiences that are not comfortable. We have to be able to kind of pull that stuff out. We have to be able to talk about it, to share it, to experience it, so that we can truly be that person that can hold that sacred space, that can, and I'm you guys, I know you guys can't see it, but I'm doing this with my hands. Like, we can hold that sacred space for our children and our youth who have been hurt in relationship. And if we don't want to deal with those uncomfortable feelings, grief and loss, we don't want to talk about rejection, we don't want to talk about guilt and shame, how can you really hold that sacred space for your children in your adolescence when they're needing you to help them be able to process those feelings and those emotions? I think the biggest gift that we as adults can give to our children and our teens, and I say children, but I'm talking about all of them, even when they're over 20 and you think they're going to leave and they don't leave and they still come back. They're always our children, regardless of what, chronological age, if you want to put that on there. And I don't really use chronological age anymore. For me, it's all developmentally, where we're at developmentally. Chronological age is a guide. It's good. It gives us a foundation. But again, when we've had different experiences in our lives, we're not going to function chronologically like other people who haven't had those experiences. So when I say children, I don't want anybody thinking that I'm being insulting or derogatory towards our older youth, because I'm not. It's just the simplest way to say it. So again, if our children are having experiences of grief and loss and rejection, and let's go through the list, guilt and shame, and having struggles with their identity, and who am I, and who do I look like, and where do I fit in, and where do I belong, intimacy and mastery and control issues, all of those lifelong issues in adoption. If our kids are struggling with that, And they're dependent on us to be able to help them work through that. But if we are resistant, if we are not comfortable having those, what I call courageous conversations, and talking about things and sharing things that might be uncomfortable for us, how can we, guys, how can we provide that safe place for our children who are dependent on us and who expect and who deserve, frankly, they deserve that from us? So when I ask you to think about what comes up for you when you've had experiences with just rejection in life, then I want you to think about times that you have felt rejected in the adoption process. And each of you is going to have a very unique experience and very unique story. And I get that. Do you ever find yourself rejecting other people before they can reject you? And have you ever thought about why? What is that about? Think about sometimes the behaviors that some of our children have. You know, some people, you know, I hear it all the time, especially in the foster care arena. You know that we know multiple placements are traumatizing. For every placement is traumatizing. It just is, and the research backs it up every time. Even if it's planned really well and diligently and very thoughtfully, it's still very traumatizing. But I'll hear from a lot of parents who say, you know, the kid just, you know, sabotaged the placement. They sabotaged it, and you know, then they had them move. And then when you think about, again, could be a whole nother training that we could talk about, but understanding the function of behaviors. And when you think about our kids who've had disrupted attachments, who've already been let down by adults very early on in their life, who already have a negative working model self-view of themselves as not being lovable, not being worthy, adults are not safe, I don't trust, I take care of myself, the world is not a safe place. They already have this blueprint, this template, based on early experiences, inconsistent responses, didn't get their needs met, never learned how to regulate their own emotions because regulation is relationship dependent. We learn how to regulate our emotions in the context of our caregivers very early on. So the majority of our children in the system or who experience trauma, abuse, or neglect never experience that. They do not have the internal capacities to regulate their own emotions. They are dependent on their caregivers. And if I'd been moved and I'd been separated from my siblings and I am struggling with this insurmountable amount of grief and loss and anxiety and fear, and I am living in survival mode every minute of every day because I have no control in my life. If the one thing I do have control over is, quote, sabotaging, then gosh darn it, I'm going to do it. And you would probably do it too if you were in those kids' positions, because it's easier to push people away and to keep people at a distance. Even though human beings are hardwired to be in relationships, human beings are not hardwired. We are not designed to live in isolation. So there is this constant push-pull. This is what I do all the time, push-pull, with a lot of our children and a lot of our youth. They want to connect with us, but when I do, it's too painful. It hurts too much. I don't want to be hurt anymore. I don't want to be victimized again. You're just like all the other people. It's this constant push-pull. So when I hear things like, well, they just sabotage the placement without, again, I'm going to generalize. I don't, every case is a little bit different on why kids will try to get out of a current placement. Maybe they think if I keep messing up, then they'll just send me home. Maybe if I've been separated from my siblings, if I don't stay here, then they'll place me with my siblings. You know, whatever it is. But it's fundamentally, there's an underlying painting of control, but it's also tapping into their attachment difficulties. I want to get close to you, but it really hurts when I do. And I don't know if I can trust you because you represent all the other big people who haven't really done what they said they were going to do, who haven't taken care of me. And I've learned I've got to take care of myself. So I also feel that there is a whole underpinning of rejection to that. It's easier for me to reject you first than for you to reject me. Who walks around going, "Oh, reject me"? I just want to sit with that. Right? No, nobody wants to feel that way. Nobody wants to feel rejected. But it is an innate feeling that some folks can have in the adoption triad. And at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about extended family and siblings, because remember I mentioned last week, and hopefully you were able to watch that recording if you weren't able to participate with us live. But again, kind of looking at the adoption triad, the classic triad is, again, the adopted child, the adoptive parents, and the birth parents. There's a lot of research now that's looking at expanding that triad, including extended family who are also affected by these lifelong issues in adoption, as well as siblings. And whether it's biological siblings, adoptive siblings, foster siblings, they're all affected in at different levels, different intensities, and in different points throughout their life. Okay. So again, I have some things that I kind of wrote down because I wanted to kind of streamline. I felt I was a little bit kind of disjointed last week because there is so much information on grief and loss. And with a fairly short period of time, it's hard to make sure that I cover all of the main points. So I spent some time kind of going through and outlining the important parts. And again, as I'm talking and as I'm sharing it, jot down some things that maybe you have questions or comments on and email those to me. That would be very helpful. Again, since we're not kind of in a format where you can kind of text or chat your comments to me, then we're going to make this work the best that we can. But there will be a longer webinar coming up with regards to grief and loss that will kind of get into more of that. So if you felt that it was kind of a superficial overview, in a way, it really was. So there will be a longer one that will be recorded that will be coming up in a few months. And so we'll get more information about that to you guys once I know the specific details on that. Okay? All right. So if you're kind of thinking about again, rejection, what that has been like for you, what your experience has been, feelings of loss are oftentimes heightened by feelings of rejection. One way individuals, adopted or not, may seek to cope with a loss is to personalize it, and that's asking the why me questions. Adopted persons might attempt to decipher what they did or did not do that led to these losses. Young children, because of their egocentric thinking, kind of take on that I did it kind of type of mentality. They'll take responsibility for the things that happen to them, including negative experiences like abandonment, abuse, or neglect. Adopted children or youth then may become sensitive to the slightest hint of rejection. And again, for a lot of folks, it's easier if I reject you first than for me to feel rejection. They might also be hypersensitive to things like disapproval or feeling dismissed, which may cause them to avoid situations where they might be rejected, or even to provoke rejection in order to prove their own negative perceptions, kind of that self-fulfilling prophecy. That, see, if I'm continually dismissed or rejected, then that means that I'm just not worthy. Again, kind of feeding into that negative working model that some of our children and adolescents have already had hardwired, that, again, that blueprint, that foundation in their brain. So we really want to pay attention. As a parent, you are given many responsibilities. And one of your responsibilities, like I always tell parents, is becoming a sensory detective, of trying to decipher and figure out and hone into, what types of sensory experiences could and may be potential trauma triggers for some of your children and youth. In addition to that, paying attention to, again, do I notice that, my child or my youth really has a hard time, kind of getting close to people and being vulnerable with people, and kind of ends certain relationships before there's any substance to it whatsoever. Could that be tied to this? Something to think about. Sometimes those that have been adopted are seldom able to view their placement into adoption as anything other than total rejection. So again, we know there can't be an adoption without grief and loss. And for a lot of folks, again, not being able to live with or stay or have my bio parents raise me is a rejection. There's no other way to see it. And asking questions like, why did they leave me? Why did they not parent me? A lot of times, if it's not verbalized, it's something that's kind of sitting in the back of their psyche, kind of that questioning of what was wrong with me. Again, needing over time to get more information to help answer those questions. Sometimes adopted individuals view the placement by the birth family as a personal rejection, regardless of the circumstances of the adoption or of the adoptive placement or coming into foster care, whatever it might be for you. Sometimes, even though our children and our youth are told, that birth mom or dad that they relinquished and, they had an adoption plan, sometimes they still don't grasp the truth in that there still can be a sense of, yeah, but, or again, kind of going to what was wrong with me. Is there anything that I could have done differently, even if they were an infant? These are normal questions that oftentimes get asked. Let's see. So sometimes for our adopted children and youth, loving an adoptive family does not take away the pain of those feelings of rejection. And sometimes you can come into a conflict with loyalty. If I, again, want to try to search at some point and get more information, I don't want my adoptive parents to feel like I'm rejecting them. That's not what this is about. But oftentimes they carry that weight of not wanting to cause any pain or any hurt, because they know what that feels like, and they don't want to instill that on anybody else. So children who've been adopted, even at young ages, grasp the concept that to be chosen into an adoptive family, as the story is often told, means that first they had to be, quote, unchosen. And again, whether you agree with that or not, that is a common comment that is made by folks who've been adopted throughout kind of their lifespan. Adopted children may wonder why maybe other family members didn't come forward to maybe help take care of them. Were they an option or were they not an option? So again, some of our children witness, families who struggle with poverty, single parents, young parents, and even parents who have medical illnesses, keeping and raising their own children. So sometimes the conclusion then is that there's something personally wrong with them, which caused the placement, whether in foster care or straight into an adoptive family, with an adoptive family. And sometimes the language of adoption used in kind of our larger society reinforces notions of rejection. So there's still some language out there that is being used, which is categorized as more negative adoption language. Terms like an unplanned pregnancy, a mistake, the child had too many needs, So again, we don't often know kind of what the interpretation is and how an individual is, understanding and processing those terms when they hear that, and how that then, kind of reflects on them as an individual. But sometimes can contribute to feelings of rejection. Sometimes our children and youth feel they're unlovable, unwanted, unworthy. They wonder if they were better, healthier, less demanding, cuter, could they have stayed with their birth family? And I know now the laws have changed in many states with regards to accessing adoption records, but for a long time we had the sealing of records, even for adults that were adopted when they were younger. That further perpetuates a feeling of not being worthy, not ever being entitled to receive one's story, fundamental basic information. And even if the adoption is open and the child or youth has access to the birth family, they can still have the same kind of questions, especially if their birth families, biological parents, mom, whoever goes on and has other children that they are raising, and then that kind of leading into questions about, again, what's wrong with me? Why couldn't I stay with you? Things like that. So one way that we can help children who've been adopted deal with feelings of rejection is to help them sort out the facts about their adoption. So facts versus the feelings, the facts about their adoption versus feelings about the adoption. Our children need support and validation when they express feelings of rejection, and we have to be comfortable, again, allowing them to express those feelings and not trying to contain it and push it down because it makes us uncomfortable. I'm trying to look and see which else. So an example is, say a child is, kind of wondering and talking aloud about not being allowed to stay with, their birth family. Adoptive parents might say something like, I can understand why you might feel that way, which is a great response. And I would encourage something like that, or I can imagine what that would be like for you, rather than trying to deny the feelings by kind of talking about, our adoption celebration day or what a great day it was, but rather honoring the expression of those feelings for what they are and not trying to, again, kind of push them down, minimize them, make them go away, because it's more uncomfortable for us as the adults. We have to be comfortable talking about that. Parents need to be open and honest in giving age-appropriate information, and to avoid taking your children's comments or questions personally as if the child is rejecting you. And I know that that can be probably one of the hardest things about being a parent in general, is how not to take things personally sometimes. And I don't have an answer for you. I ask every group that I go to if anybody has figured out the magic key, the magic pill on how not to take things personal. And the truth is, there isn't one. It is something different for everybody. But I think, again, having the understanding, having the awareness, and allowing yourself to have some grace that you're probably going to make mistakes sometimes, because we're human and we do. But there's always an opportunity to learn and to grow. And so we all are doing the best we can with the tools that we have in any given moment. And I firmly believe that. And if you need some help, then I really, really want to ask you to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. There is nothing wrong with saying, I am not sure what to do or what to say with this. I don't know. And that's okay. We don't know everything. We're not superhuman. And again, if you are not taking good care of yourself, you're not going to be able to be that regulated caregiver in the context of relationship that our children need and that they deserve. So hang on to that. So feelings or fears of rejection can really chip away at someone's self-esteem. You know, good self-esteem is built on having, number one, positive role models. Number two, a sense of belonging, kind of feeling like you belong, you're in the right place. Number three, an awareness of one's unique role in a family, in a community, in the world. And number four, a sense of power and control in one's life. You know, positive role models could come from the biological family or from other adults, you know, who successfully met the challenges of adoption. You know, other mentors, other, you know, connections and relationships can really help our children and our youth. A true sense of belonging comes from the adoptive family claiming the child and feeling entitled to parent without dismissing or being in competition with the birth family. So this is, again, a gentle reminder that, excuse me, I have an itch, that if you are still struggling with your own emotions and feelings towards your child's birth family, I am going, again, just a gentle reminder that you are going to need to do some work with that. You need to process that. It is going to come out in ways when you are not doing well, when you're stressed out, that you probably don't want to have come out. And so, again, I know all of your situations are probably very unique. Some of you probably have amazing connection, relationship, whatever that looks like, with birth family. Some of you maybe not. So again, and it can be like on a continuum. So again, I can't generalize because I know that there's going to be variations in who is out there in this adoption world. But if you, again, are really harboring some animosity and some anger towards your child's birth family, I just encourage you to work on that, because it will come out and your child will feel it, they will see it. And because there will always be that connection with their birth family, it will never go away. Just because a court was involved and there's a piece of paper, there's always going to be some connection and some bond there. So for the sake of your relationship with your child, I would encourage you to do some work around that. Okay. Families can help children develop their sense of uniqueness by recognizing, exploring, and encouraging the child's abilities, their traits, their special talents, even if they differ greatly from those of the adoptive family. So again, we're all individual, even if we come from the same family unit, even if there's blood connection, even if there's genetic connection, but we still are all very unique. Even within our biological families, some of us have siblings where we don't even know what they came from. And we often wonder, kind of, sometimes, where did I get these traits and abilities? Because it's very different than my family of origin. Children feel powerful when they are given real age-appropriate choices. Things from like what they eat, what type of, do you want juice or milk? You know, do you want the red coat? Do you want the blue coat? I know this is for little kids, but you can do this with older kids too. You set it up, this or this. They have a choice. That's mastery and control. And if they make the bad choice, then there's consequences for that choice, just like there is in life. And really, you know, positive, healthy, appropriate self-esteem supports the child's progress, really even through these varying kind of lifelong issues that are out there. So again, a lot of folks who've come from trauma and traumatic backgrounds, even starting in utero, have attachment difficulties. And an awareness of loss and rejection may reinforce an adopted individual's wariness of close, intimate relationships. Children who are suffering from various attachment difficulties due to previous unresolved losses, experiences, or feelings of rejection often create further rejection, sometimes in their adoptive placements. They tend to feel or believe that they will feel, quote, safer if they create a distance in their connections to others. Again, and this is kind of leading into that whole sabotaging of placements that we've talked about before. So sometimes the acting out behaviors are aimed at just keeping distance. Again, when you understand attachment and you understand where that's coming from and you understand the blueprint, the foundation that a lot of our children and adolescents are working from based on these earlier experiences, it makes a lot of sense. And again, recognizing that it's not personal. So again, if my child was traumatized in the context of a relationship, and I know, because I heard this lady say, and it really makes sense to me, that trauma then can only heal in the context of a relationship, you shouldn't be surprised that they're going to try to push you out of relationship because it's safer and more comfortable for them when they do things on their own terms. I do it when I have control over it. But again, it's that push-pull dichotomy of attachment and relationships that most of our children and our adolescents have. You guys have friends in your life who are adults who still have attachment difficulties in life as adults. But what I want to say to you, and I want you to hear me, because we didn't know this about 20, 25 years ago when I first started in this social work profession. You know, we the professionals, were of the belief that, you know, if a child came into foster care and they were not exhibiting the capacity to attach by a certain age, and typically that age was anywhere between 5 to 7 years old, if they did not exhibit the traits or the capacity to attach to adults, then we need to institutionalize them and we need to lock them up because they are going to grow up without a conscience. They are going to grow up and be psychopaths and sociopaths and, you know, hindrance to society. So we just better keep them in institutions. And then being in institutions perpetuated their attachment disruptions because there was nobody there to attach to. But what I want to share with you now is that what the neuroscience and what the brain research is telling us now, which is exciting, and this is why nobody is beyond the hope of healing. Nobody is beyond the hope of healing because of what we know now, even with how trauma affects the brain development, even if we know about the different types of trauma, even if trauma starts in utero, right? Even if the attachment cycle was disrupted for the first, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of life, what we know now, neuroscience has confirmed that the part of our brain that's responsible for attachment and attachment throughout the lifespan is actually open to growing and changing throughout the entire lifespan. So our capacity to attach, to connect, stops the day we die. But the ability to attach and connect in the context of a relationship is there throughout our entire life. And then I go back to, again, individuals who've been traumatized in the context of a relationship can only heal in the context of a relationship. We are rewiring those neuronal connections. We are strengthening those neuronal connections in the context of a relationship every minute of every day based on your interactions with your children, based on your interactions maybe with a family member who has had some attachment difficulties. Every time we challenge that push-pull of I want to connect to you, but it's really uncomfortable and I don't like being uncomfortable, I like predictability and I like how things work. Every time we're slowly challenging that, those neurons are changing. They're rewiring. And so the brain only learns through repetition, which is why some of you are like, but she said the same thing over and over and over already. I've heard it from her 5 times. I know what I'm doing. I say the same things because I know the brain only learns through repetition. So the more you hear me say things, the more it's actually going to stick up here. And that's why a lot of times as parents, you feel like you're a broken record. Why do I have to keep telling my kids over and over and over and over and over? Why do I have to tell them to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over? Because the brain only learns through repetition. And the bottom line is we are working really hard to replace those early connections that might have been based on trauma, that might have been based on fear, that was not based on attachment, healthy attachment, was not based on creating a sense of regulation, right? So we are now having to go back essentially through our experiences in the context of relationship over and over and over and over and over and over and over to try to rewire the brain, which does happen. It takes time, but it does happen. Okay, so hopefully maybe that was kind of your aha for today. But if one of your pet peeves is that you have to be a broken record, you might need to let that go a little bit. So you might have to be a broken record for a long time because we're repairing what's going on in here and you can't see that. And so it's very frustrating when you can't see what's going on inside their brains. All we have to go on are just the behaviors. And that's a whole nother training that we can go on and on and on and on and on and on about. Okay, all right. So kind of going back to why some of our, why some of our children or adolescents maybe kind of create rejection. They tend to feel or believe that they will be safer if they create distance in their connections to other people. Again, the acting out behaviors are usually aimed at keeping some sort of a distance, and there is a function and a purpose to every behavior. Our job is to figure out what that function and what that purpose is. That's our job. What are they telling us? The only way they know how to communicate it is through this behavior, which a lot of times makes no sense to me whatsoever. But all a behavior is an external expression of some internal dysregulation. Something is going on, right? So think about that the next time you get some of those behaviors. So that, again, is kind of going into how we then kind of categorize behaviors as being, maladaptive and inappropriate, when most of the time they're coming from some sort of an attachment disruption, some sort of an attachment difficulty. So again, parental commitment, different from attachment or even love, before the attachment becomes secure, is really what holds adoptions together. So again, kind of going back to, again, how rejection affects the adoptee or the child or the youth that was adopted. Rejection can really interfere, again, I think it's very clear, with attachment, with friendships, with parent-child relationships, self-esteem, how they view, their worth. So again, the more knowledge that we have, the better off we're all going to be. So a child's feelings of rejection are directly related to abandonment, which I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Again, if our children and our youth don't have a way to express their confusion, their fear, their sadness, their anger over their perceived rejection, and again, doesn't make it any less impactful if it's an actual or a perceived rejection. Our brain, the way that it's hardwired with our amygdala, is real or perceived fear, threat, or danger will put you in fight, flight, or freeze mode. Real or perceived. So again, if my experience, I now have a perception, it doesn't make it any less impactful for the individual who's feeling it. And our children, again, may act out with tantrums or behaviors. It might look like depression, withdrawal. You may have a child or a youth who expresses it by being extra controlling, or exhibits intense anxiety about loss or separation. Children who've been adopted may feel shame. Again, this will kind of go into next week. Things like saying to themselves, I must be bad, unlovable, that my birth mom, gave me away or didn't want me or didn't keep me, or whatever language they're using to describe this experience for themselves. And that, again, can exacerbate poor self-esteem. Adoption, like we all know, is a lifelong process. It's a lifelong learning opportunity, is another way to describe it. Understanding the need for ongoing communication, honest, you want to do developmentally age appropriate, communication, sharing information, learning words to use. But it's part of what we've all been called to do. So then it kind of gets into talking about some of the common feelings that some of our adopted children and youth might have. I think we all can take a lesson from kind of expanding our vocabulary on feeling words and being able to really identify how we feel and is that accurate. Most people just know the mad, sad, happy, glad, or feeling, you know, standard set of feeling words. But a lot of our children and our youth especially, even though they think they know everything when they're adolescents, and so that kind of compounds all this because they know everything and, you know, they don't need you to help them with anything. That's what they have their friends for. But they really have no idea why they're feeling the way they do inside. Sometimes they haven't really had any help with making the connection between their losses and their current feelings. Sometimes they don't understand what's triggering the reactions and sometimes overreactions. They don't know why. Sometimes they're just angry, why they might be taking it out on mom or dad. Why they carry so much inexpressible emotion. They carry a lot. They carry just so much sometimes and don't know what to do with it. So again, another reason why it's critical for us, the rest of us, to work on our stuff so that we can share and we can sit in that place with them, that they can kind of dump that stuff if they need to, right? It's not going to get us all anxious and freaked out, you know, that we can just be sometimes with them. You don't really even have to say anything sometimes. Just kind of allowing that safe space for them to be able to process, just kind of dump it out, just kind of put it out there. You know, because if they put it out there and they get the, oh God, I can't handle that. You know, I've got my own stuff I'm working on. I can't handle this for you. They're probably never gonna share with you again. That's not what we want. That's not what we want at all. You know, so think about, do your children have permission and encouragement to express how they're feeling? You know, what are you as the parent, caregiver, what are you more comfortable with? You know, what type of expressions are not so comfortable for you? And what can we do to help you with that? You know, I think life books a lot of times can be a fantastic tool that can kind of facilitate, in a way, sometimes allowing for the expression of these emotions and for them to, your children to be able to ask questions. It's not designed to necessarily put you on the spot, but a tool for them to know that you care about their story, that you're invested, the commitment piece that we talk about, and that you're not going to get all weird and wigged out when they bring up their, you know, biological family, or maybe have questions that maybe you can't answer because you don't know. But the fact that you can be there and be genuine and be authentic, you know, really can do wonders for your relationship with the child, your attachments, your connections. You know, that's the stuff I'm talking about, that, you know, healing trauma happens in the context of relationships. That's what I'm talking about. And if you don't know about life books, let me know, or talk to Central Missouri Foster Care and Adoption Association. I have some free websites that I can email to them if they want to post it, kind of where to go, how to do it, basics about life books. It's nothing complicated at all, but just, again, a very helpful tool that might be able to kind of facilitate some of what we're talking about. Your child may not talk about rejection, but you might, again, see it in certain behaviors, that there's something going on or something that they're wrestling with. You know, for example, does your child or your teen seem to be very hypersensitive to disapproval? Have you kind of noticed that with your child? Do they avoid situations where they might be rejected, maybe as if trying out for some school activity or a school play, sports team? Do they provoke you into an argument or conflict, kind of setting the stage to be rejected in order to prove that they were correct already, kind of that self-fulfilling prophecy? So some things to kind of think about with that. So again, sometimes, adopted youth or adoptees are seldom able to view their placement into adoption by their birth family as anything other than a total rejection. So again, even at a young age, being able to grasp the idea of being chosen also means that you had to be unchosen somewhere along the line, which can reinforce kind of a lower self-concept, self-image, if you will. Again, and I think we need to be very mindful of, if you do have, a child or a youth in your home, or even a young adult who was adopted, and they're asking for more information, that we, again, really pay attention to what that brings up for you. What does that bring up for you? That they want to know more information about their story. They want to know more details about their family. Maybe they want to search for their family. What is that bringing up for you? And seek support and guidance around that if you need to. Really quickly, I know we're almost out of time, but from the birth parent perspective with regards to rejection, a lot of birth parents will reject themselves as irresponsible, unworthy, because maybe they allowed for, the child to be placed in foster care, or they relinquished, which, led to an adoption. And then a lot of times can turn those feelings against themselves, as they deserved this, they deserve the rejection, and then come to expect and cause rejection in their life. Birth parents frequently condemn themselves for being irresponsible, and often so does society. Adoptive parents may inadvertently create fantasies for the adoptee about the birth family that reinforces these feelings of rejection. So again, something that we kind of have to pay attention to. And then depending on the choices that they make in their lives thereafter, are they themselves struggling with attachment issues? And so it's, again, easier to kind of sabotage relationships and connections, or jobs, if you will, because they would rather be in control of that than be hurt or have something happen to them. So again, this isn't kind of not all birth parents maybe feel this way, but this is kind of, again, what the research is telling us with regards to rejection, kind of how it can manifest in birth parents. Sometimes for our adoptive parents with regards to rejection, again, a lot of the research with regards to adoptive parents looks at if you struggled with infertility issues or having biological children, how that plays into these lifelong issues. So please just bear with me on that that's not applicable for all of you. But again, a lot of the early research on this, that's kind of was the primary focus when they were looking at these issues. So some adoptive parents may feel ostracized because of infertility or procreation difficulties. They may take it out on their partners, expect rejection, may even kind of keep the adoptee at a distance to avoid being rejected by the child, the adolescent, the young adult, whoever it is. Adoptive parents may sense their bodies have rejected them, again, if they struggle with infertility issues. The couple or the individual may then feel betrayed or rejected by their higher power because they weren't able to have biological children. When they come to adoption, thinking about how the birth parents may be critical or criticize them for their parenting style, or choosing to take on essentially somebody else's child. Might struggle with issues of entitlement, wondering perhaps if you were ever really meant to be parents, or especially to this particular child. And the adoptive family may then watch for the adoptee to reject them, kind of interpreting small types of behaviors and interactions as rejection, may actually become hypersensitive and hypervigilant to that on their own. Siblings are also affected by rejection. I think a lot of the areas that we've already covered. You know, if I had siblings when I came into care, or if I was adopted and we weren't able to stay together for whatever reason, the questions of feeling rejected with regards to my siblings, you know, and kind of internalizing that, what was wrong with me, if I just could have been different, if I could have done better, if I didn't say this, if I didn't do this, you know, could we have all been in the same place? So with siblings, it's powerful, kind of have that perpetual feeling of rejection, but it doesn't diminish that bond and that connection over the lifespan. Extended family may feel rejection if they are related to the biological parent who maybe they relinquished rights or rights were terminated by a judge in the court, you know, essentially basically have no legal standing to that child at all. And that is dependent on the adoptive family to determine any sort of contact, if any. So feeling rejection from that standpoint, feeling rejection from the system, feeling rejection from their grandson or their granddaughter or their niece or their nephew, maybe related to the questions that was asked earlier about why didn't that family step in and take care of me, you know, kind of what that's about. So again, it all kind of plays together. But again, I think this is a topic that most people don't really like to talk about, but it's something that, again, we just have to be aware of, that it may affect you or your family members more than maybe some of these other issues, that we really just have to be comfortable talking about it should it come up. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of insight into rejection. And I look forward to seeing you guys on here again in just a few weeks. So again, our next session is June 6th, same time, same place. We'll email out the link to you the day of or day before, and that one's going to be on guilt and shame. So if you have any other questions or comments or feedback and you want to email me, again, my email is Denise Rice, R-I-C-E, one word. It's DENISERICE at hotmail.com. I hope you guys have a great rest of May, and I look forward to seeing you or being back on here in a few weeks. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your night. Take care of each other. Bye.